Shalom and greetings in the name of YaHuWaH. The name of YaHuWaH is going forth to the four corners of the earth. That is because we are living in the last days, and there's a great awakening that is taking place, and people of every nation, tribe, and tongue are beginning to have a revelation that the name of the Most High is important, that it is relevant, that the name the prophets declared in their time must likewise be declared in this time, because we are on the threshing floor of the Malkut Hashemayim, the kingdom of the heavens, and the Melech, the king, will rule and reign. And who is this Melech? Who is this king? YaHuWaH. YaHuWaH Sabaoth, YaHuWaH of the armies. YaHuWaH is going to rule and reign on the earth. He is going to set up his kingdom, his Malkut, on the earth. And his Malkut has a law. It has righteous decrees that we must live by. We call this righteous set of decrees Torah. The word Torah in Hebrew, in Ibrit, literally means instructions and teachings. But when it came into English, we simply say that it means law. But the word law is not as complex as the word Torah truly is. It's not as rich and beautiful as the word Torah is, because the word law just implies a rigid set of rules that one must adhere to. Immediately when you hear the word law, you think of the laws of your government, the laws of the nation which you are currently in. But we are talking about laws who come from the creator of the universe. We're talking about his decrees. And the word Torah in Hebrew and Ibrit comes from the root word Yara. Yara literally means to shoot at a target, to aim for precision. It also means to lay a foundation. And all of these concepts are all related to the word Torah. So when we think of the Torah being an instruction, a teaching, when we see it as a law, we must also apply the concepts that this is for precision, that we are doing this for accuracy. We are aiming at a target. We are laying a foundation. This is what Torah is all about. Many people in these last days are asking, what is Torah? And therefore, it is a great honor that has been bestowed upon me by the Creator, YaHuWaH, to elaborate on this subject matter, because these are the laws of the kingdom. These are the laws of the Shemayim, of the heavens. These are the righteous decrees, the laying of the foundation, the precision and accuracy that comes from the Melech HaOlam, that comes from the King of eternity, the King of the universe, YaHuWaH. Hallelujah. So it is a great honor to speak on this subject matter. Many men before me have laid this foundation. They have already declared these matters. Many great men in the scriptures, such as Melech Dawid, who is called King David. He spoke in the Tehillim, and he said in Psalms, Tehillim 19, the great composer Dawid wrote, the Torah of YaHuWaH is perfect, converting the being. The witness of YaHuWaH is trustworthy, making wise the simple. That word converting there literally comes from the word shub. Shub means to turn away from. Teshuba means to repent from. That's what repentance is about. To turn away from your sin, to turn back to YaHuWaH. The purpose of the Torah is to bring about a conversion experience where you realize that you are a flawed human being in need of a compassionate, eternal creator to fix you, to show you the way. Even the ant knows the law of his colony, and he does not transgress against it. The birds of the Shemayim know their way. The trees of the field know when to break dormancy in the spring and when to go dormant in the fall. But man walks to and fro, and he does not know. He does not take it into heart. He does not consider that there is an eternal creator who sits upon the throne. Instead, he subjects himself to idol worship and to things that are vain and things that do not profit. And man is disconnected from the Creator. Because the first man, Adam, was exiled from Gan Eden, the Garden of Eden, because of his khatat, his sin. And the word khatat, that word literally means to separate or miss a target. So therefore Torah literally tells us to aim for the target, to look for precision. But chatat means that you miss the target, that you're off from the aim of YaHuWaH. You're off from the goal of YaHuWaH when you allow sin into your life. And we live in a time where sin flourishes. People are so proud of their sin, proud of their abominations, proud of the fact that they're disconnected from the Most High. But YaHuWaH Elohim, in His great compassion and His kindness, He spoke to His servants, the prophets, righteous men, all the way from Adam, all the way to the end through Mashiach, Yahushua. He has declared through His disciples and through those who followed Him, His Talmudim, we are to know that this is the truth, that YaHuWaH sits on the throne and He requires of man a certain way to live. You can't just choose your own way. The way that seems right to a man leads to death. It leads to folly. It leads to all types of mishaps and destruction in his life. There's a wide way that leads to destruction. There's just a narrow way that leads to life. And we have to shoot for that target. We have to shoot with great precision. We must lay that foundation, the foundation of Torah, because David said that the purpose of Torah is to bring about a conversion experience. It's to make you repent. It's to make you turn from your sins. It's to make you turn and shoot more accurately at YaHuWaH's target, to aim for Torah, to aim for the truth. So we are in a time where YaHuWaH is clearly showing us that He no longer wants the exile of man, but He wants to bring man into His kingdom, bring man into His Malkut. And the only way to establish this is that man must reflect the image of his Creator, because the scripture says that man is made in YaHuWaH's likeness and YaHuWaH's image. So therefore we must strive for the perfection that YaHuWaH has laid out. And what did David say? He says the Torah of YaHuWaH is perfect. That the point of the Torah is to convert the being. The witness of YaHuWaH is trustworthy and it makes wise the simple. The Torah itself says by the word of YaHuWaH that this Torah, these laws, these instructions, they will be your chokmah, they will be your wisdom. The entire purpose of the Torah is for accuracy, is to make wise the simple. That's what David said. David said many things about the Torah, too countless to tell, many things that I've had to leave out that were very important because it would just consume so much time to go through all the things that David said. But here are some of the highlights of some of the things that Melech David, the king David, said about YaHuWaH's perfect Torah. In Psalm Tehillim 119 verse 1, he said, Ashrei, or happy, are the perfect in the way, who walk in the Torah of YaHuWaH. So if we want to be perfect in YaHuWaH's way, in His derek, in His path, we must walk in the Torah of YaHuWaH. Verse 18 of the same chapter says, open my eyes that I might see wonders from your Torah. Verse 55 says, I have remembered your name in the night, O YaHuWaH, and I guard your Torah. Verse 72, the Torah of your mouth is better to me than thousands of gold and silver pieces. Verse 142, your righteousness is righteousness forever, and your Torah is truth. Therefore, YaHuWaH's word is righteous. His righteousness is reflected in the revelation, the self-revelation of Torah that He expressed to His servant Moshe, who's called Moshe and Moses. Oftentimes in the scriptures you will see the Torah referred to as Torah Moshe or Torah Moshe because it means the Torah of Moses. And oftentimes you will see it called Torah YaHuWaH, the Torah of YaHuWaH. And this revelation shows that YaHuWaH is trying to bridge the gap that has happened because of the exile that took place from the Garden of Eden because man sinned against YaHuWaH. And now He is showing that not only is it the Torah of YaHuWaH, but the Torah also of a man named Moshe. And Moshe was he was the one who initiated the covenant. He was the mediator of the covenant that YaHuWaH used to bring Bnei Yisrael, the children of Israel, into covenant with Him. And this was a fulfillment of the words that he spoke to Abraham, who's called Abraham, Yitzhak, who's called Isaac, and Yaakov, who's called Jacob. And these things came to pass, and they're coming to pass. And the fulfillment of all of this will be that YaHuWaH will rule and reign over all the earth. And that he will set apart his people, Yisrael, who's called Yasharel, the upright with YaHuWaH, the ones who wrestle and overcome with Elohim, that they will rule and reign also in his Malchut, that they will be officials that will have very high positions, that his servants, the prophets, will have in his kingdom, and all these things are being laid out. But this is all coming through the system of Torah, because Torah, again, is the law, the reflected law of the kingdom of the heavens, the Malchut HaShemayim. In Yeshayahu, Isaiah chapter 8, verse 20, Isaiah, who is Yeshayahu, speaks to the Torah and to the witness. If they do not speak according to this word, it is because they have no light or no daybreak, is literally what it means. So therefore, we know that if one does not speak according to the Torah, if they speak another revelation, and the Torah itself says this, that if anyone comes with another revelation other than this revelation, that they are a false prophet. It's very clear that we live in a time where there are many false prophets all over the land who are telling us that we don't want to be shackled down with the bondage of the law of the Most High. But the law of the Most High is liberation from bondage. YaHuWaH has come to break the shackles of death, of sin off of his people and show them the better way, the way of his Torah. In Hosea chapter 4 verse 6, YaHuWaH says, "My people have perished for a lack of knowledge. Because you have rejected knowledge, I reject you from being a priest, a Kohen for me. Since you have forgotten the Torah of your Elohim, I also will forget your children." Now we know that this particular verse, where it was under certain circumstances, he didn't mean he would forget the children forever. But he was letting them know that at this particular time that the people were walking against YaHuWaH. Yisrael was not perfect. Yasharel, when you read their history and the chronologies of their kings and all these things, you will see that many times they strayed and they went after the idols of the Canaanites and the Perizzites and the Hittites and all the people of the land of Canaan. And oftentimes they worship Baal, who means Lord, and all these things. They turned their back on YaHuWaH. And at this time we see that YaHuWaH said that because they had rejected the Torah and they had turned to other mighty ones, because of these things, that the penalty would be that he would even forget them and their children. This is a very eye-opening verse to let us know how important the word of YaHuWaH is, because the word of YaHuWaH is the knowledge that they hated. It said they were destroyed because of a lack of knowledge. What does the Torah say? It says that this Torah will be your chokmah. It will be your wisdom. It will make you wise. It will be your binah. It will be your understanding. It will be your da'at. It will be your knowledge. It will be all these things to you. It will be a sign to you in your forehead, in your right hand, when you do these things, when you abide by these principles. That is what YaHuWaH's word says. In Malachi chapter 4, concerning the last days which we live in, YaHuWaH says in verse 4, "Remember the Torah of Moshe, my servant, which I commanded him in Horeb for all of Yisrael, laws and right rulings. See, I am sending Eliyahu, the prophet, before the coming of the great and awesome day of YaHuWaH." So we see in the context clearly this is referring to the time frame in which we live. We await for the time of the revealing of Eliyahu, the prophet, when he will come. And we also know and see that the awakening of the people, they will begin to remember the Torah before the coming of the great and awesome day of YaHuWaH. And that is the time that we live in. So we are remembering the Torah because it is commanded in the scriptures that it will be relevant all the way until the time of the day of YaHuWaH. Many have separated these concepts. In Christianity, they teach that the law has been done away with. It was somehow nailed to the stake. It has been completely forgotten. But the word of YaHuWaH is clear that we should remember the Torah even until the coming of the great and awesome day of YaHuWaH. Again, the word Torah means literally righteous instructions which apply to this life. Sometimes we see in a minor instances of context in Scripture that the word Torah can reflect the instructions of a mother or a father, such as in the Proverbs, the Mishle. And that should be taken into consideration when we are understanding the fullness of Torah, because YaHuWaH is called Abinu. That means our Father. He is called our Father. So therefore, we must look at this set of instructions that imply an accuracy, that imply laying a foundation and shooting a target. All these things that the Torah means, we should understand this also in the context of the instructions that a father gives their child, because the way that a father inspires a child is through love and through affection, through having a general interest in the well-being of that child. This is YaHuWaH. YaHuWaH is not a distant Elohim. He is not off, just doing his own thing. He's very much in the affairs of this world, in the things that are happening in this life. He is acting constantly. His hand is moving. He is the one who is in the ultimate control of all that is taking place. He governs the universe, but he also cares for his people. He sees the tears that they shed. He wants them to rejoice. He has a general care, just like a father would have for their child. So when we understand this, we'll understand that the idea of law doesn't really truly always reflect the word Torah, because the word Torah, again, it implies something deeper. It implies a relationship that can be had with the Creator. So this is also important to understand. Oftentimes the word Torah is used synonymously with the books of Moshe exclusively, because we see in the scriptures in Devarim chapter 33 verse 4, it says that Moshe, who's been called Moshe and Moses, commanded us a Torah, an inheritance of the assembly of Yaakov. And we know that it was this same Moshe, the same Moses who gave the Torah in written form. But we have to understand that the Torah teaches that the Torah itself, the instructions and teachings that were written down by Moshe, written down by Moses, that those principles are in fact eternal. We read in the Torah, in Bereshith, in Genesis, chapter 26, verses 4 through 5. And I shall increase your seed like the stars of the Shemaim of the heavens, and I shall give all these lands to your seed, and in your seed all the nations of the earth shall be Baruch. Abraham obeyed my voice and guarded my charge, my commands, my laws, and my Torot. In Hebrew, that last verse reads Ekeb Asher, which literally means for which Shema heard Abraham. He listened, Abraham, Bekoli, to my voice, in my voice. Yishmor, and he guarded. Mishmarti, my guards, my commands, my precepts. Mitzvoti, my commands. Now that word commands is actually very deep, because the root of mitzvah means literally to connect, to bridge a gap, to make a connection. So as we spoke earlier, that YaHuWaH is now delivering his people from the exile, from where they have been separated from him because of their sin. The idea of the mitzvah, the idea of the connection, the commandment, brings a bridging of the gap. It closes that gap and it brings a connection. This is how we connect with the Creator, by guarding His commandments. And then it says chukaktai, which chukaktai comes from the word chuk, and that word chuk literally means a commandment that does not literally make sense when we apply it to human logic. Something that just goes beyond our comprehension, such as the Pesach, the Passover. How, what human being could fathom that slaying a lamb within its first year and applying the door to the post of a house would spare the firstborn from being destroyed? I mean, it doesn't make logical sense in the human mind, but it makes perfect sense in YaHuWaH's mind and YaHuWaH's design and everything that He has done in this existence. So therefore we do it because He said it. It doesn't always have to make scientific sense. When we talk about things like the idea of what we should eat and what we shouldn't eat according to the scripture, many like to point out that if you eat the things that YaHuWaH says are clean, that it is scientifically proven that these are better meats for you. And yes, it is scientifically proven. However, YaHuWaH doesn't always look for us to find a scientific answer for why He says to do something. Therefore, Abraham guarded not just the commands, the connections. Not only did he watch over all of YaHuWaH's guardings. That's what that one word means, shamarti. It means the things that he guards, the things that he watches over, like a watchtower, things like that. But not only did he do all these things, but he also did the things that defied human logic. And it says further, YaToratai, which literally means and my Torah. So Abraham literally knew the fullness of the Torah. He knew all the fullness of the precise decrees that YaHuWaH had given. He knew the foundation. That's what the word Yara from Torah means. He knew the accuracy of YaHuWaH's Torah. He knew all these things. He knew every single righteous decree before it was ever written with ink on any type of skin or hide. He understood this. He walked in it. How did he do this? By Ruach HaKodesh, which is the set-apart wind and breath, what is called the set-apart spirit of YaHuWaH, his Ruach. And Abraham was able to know the righteous decrees of YaHuWaH. And we see that righteous men from Abel, who is called Hebel, all the way through to Abraham, to Moshe, all the prophets, before YaHuWaH had ever commanded that any of the Torah be written down with ink, they knew the difference between clean and unclean animals. For instance, we see clearly when Noah, he builds the ark, and YaHuWaH says that a pair of unclean animals will come on the ark, but 7 pairs of the clean animals will come onto the ark. So therefore, Noah already knew and had an understanding of clean and unclean. But not just this, we see clearly that even before this, Abel, who is Hebel, he offered clean animals as sacrifice to YaHuWaH, and Hebel was the son of Adam. So it goes all the way back to Adam, all the way back to Adam. They knew the concepts of sacrifice. They knew the concepts of clean and unclean animals. They knew the concepts of the Shabbat. After all, it says in Genesis chapter 2, YaHuWaH Shabbat, and he rested, or and YaHuWaH Shabbat, and he celebrated Sabbath. So YaHuWaH was the first. And we see in the context that he had just made Adam the day before. And in the greater context, we see that he walks with Adam in the garden. So therefore, Adam knew the Sabbath. He knew these things. He knew clean and unclean animals as well. He knew all these principles. Nothing ever changed. Only a bigger picture, a more enhanced picture came about through time. That's all that really happened. But YaHuWaH never changed. His patterns, everything that he laid into motion are eternal. Because it says here, again, when we read it just simply in English, it says, Abraham obeyed my voice and guarded my charge, my commands, my laws, and my Torot, my Torah. That's a plural of Torah. Because it's in the plural, we know that means that he knew all of the Torah. He didn't just understand a little piece here, a little piece there. Abraham was a prophet. YaHuWaH showed him visions. He gave him dreams. He spoke to his heart many times. He revealed himself. He's, so many things that happened in Abraham's life. The man was a prophet. He knew these things by revelation through the Ruach HaKodesh from YaHuWaH. But Abraham lived 400 years before Moshe, who's called Moshe, ever wrote the Torah on any type of hide or anything like that. It was never, before it was ever written with ink onto any type of scroll. Abraham already knew. Noah already knew. These righteous men, before the Torah was written, they already knew, and there was no difference in the revelation. YaHuWaH didn't all of a sudden start accepting unclean animals. He didn't all of a sudden start accepting abominations. He didn't all of a sudden accept idol worship. We never see that he changes his mind through the course of time ever. He says, I am YaHuWaH, do not change. So Abraham knew the Torah before it was ever given. So when we call the Torah, like I said before, in the scriptures you'll see that the Torah is often called Torah Moshe, which means the laws of Moshe, the man Moshe, Moshe. And it's called Torah YaHuWaH, which means the laws of YaHuWaH. Again, that kind of shows the picture of the mediator, who's the man, and the bridging of the gap with YaHuWaH's people, with Bnei Israel, YaHuWaH bringing them into a covenant relationship, using both terminologies, because it is the Torah of YaHuWaH after all. This isn't from Moses' heart. It's not from his mind. None of these things came from him. They were declared by YaHuWaH. He received the revelation on Har Sinai, on Mount Sinai. And he received the Torah by vision, and YaHuWaH spoke to him clearly and revealed all these things to him on the mountain. When we read about Adam in the book of Genesis, this was written by Moshe, but it was spoken to him by YaHuWaH. So Moshe acts as the scribe. And before this was ever written down, like I said, righteous men all knew these principles. The Torah is eternal. Devarim chapter 4 verse 2 further speaks about the Torah itself. Do not add to the word which I command you, and do not take away from it, so as to guard the commands of YaHuWaH your Elohim, which I am commanding you. Further, he says in Deuteronomy chapter 29 verse 29, the secret matters belong to YaHuWaH our Elohim, but what is revealed belongs to us and our children forever, to do all the words of this Torah. So therefore YaHuWaH even includes the children, saying that they will be doing this Torah forever. There will be no ending to this. It is eternal. Before it was written, it existed. Well, after it was written, it will still exist. It will always exist, because these are the principles of YaHuWaH. They are eternal because YaHuWaH is eternal. I mentioned at the beginning of this teaching that many people are learning the name of YaHuWaH. The word for name is Shem. That word Shem literally means the spoken name, the way that it is pronounced. That is what Shem means. But it also means character. In the way that we use it in the West, we use the terminology that somebody might have do something for their name's sake or something to that effect, because therefore when we're saying that somebody does it for their name, the idea of name is attributed to their character, to their reputation. The same goes for YaHuWaH. So when we are talking about this, we're talking about Torah. Torah is a reflection of YaHuWaH's character. Just as his name will always be Yod-Heh-Wah-Heh, it will never be the Lord, it will never be G-O-D or anything like that. It will always be YaHuWaH. It will never change. The Torah itself will never change, because it is a part of his name. It is a part of it. You can't have one revelation without having the other revelation. It is in fact one picture. So his name is synonymous with the concept of his Torah, because it is his reputation. It is his fame. Also, further in Deuteronomy 31 verse 11, it says, when all Yisrael come to appear before YaHuWaH your Elohim in the place which he chooses, which is Yerushalayim, or Jerusalem, the place which he chooses, read this Torah before all Yisrael in their hearing. Assemble the people, the men and the women and the little ones, and the sojourner who is within your gates, so that they hear, and so they learn to fear YaHuWaH your Elohim, and guard to do all the words of this Torah. And their children who have not known it should hear, and learn to fear YaHuWaH your Elohim, as long as you live in the land you are passing over the Yarden to possess. So when we are talking about Torah, as I said before, it is eternal. Obviously, it pre-existed before it was ever written down. But when we use the word Torah generally, many associate again the concept specifically of the 5 books that were written by Moshe or Moshe, because they are called Torah throughout the scriptures. But any instruction that comes from YaHuWaH is Torah, should be guarded as Torah. But no prophet, as we read before, no one has the authority to change the Torah. YaHuWaH said, you do not add to it, you do not subtract from it. So not a king, a prophet, no one has the ability to change his everlasting words. But when we think of Torah in this context, when we think of the context of Moshe, when we think of the scriptures that he wrote, we need to understand the importance of the actual document itself. Sefer Torah is a hand-scribed copy of the Torah, the original Hebrew, Ivrit text of the 5 books of Moshe, who is Moshe. The text was dictated to the prophet, the scribe Moshe, who wrote them by the revelation of YaHuWaH's own voice. The scriptures tell us that YaHuWaH did not speak to Moshe through vision or through dream, but he spoke to him face to face. And he gave him the revelation in the Lashon Esh, the tongue of fire, Lashon Kodesh, which is the set apart tongue that today we call Hebrew or Ivrit. YaHuWaH framed the worlds using this language. He spoke to the prophets using this language. His Malakim, his messengers who come from the heavens, spoke to the prophets using this language. After Moshe passed away, according to the Torah, the children of Yisrael or Yasharel conquered the promised land. Next to the Messiah, HaMashiach, Moshe is considered to be the greatest prophet. And though this is the case, YaHuWaH did not allow him to enter into the promised land to lead his people. Instead, YaHuWaH chose Yahushua ben Nun to be a prophetic foreshadowing of the Messiah to lead the children of Israel into the promised land. After much time, the children of Israel decided that they needed a king over them. And YaHuWaH appointed Shaul. And Shaul turned away from the word of YaHuWaH. And therefore YaHuWaH chose Dawid and his son after him. And King Solomon or Shlomo built the Beit HaMikdash, the temple of YaHuWaH. And it was established in Yerushalayim or Jerusalem. And at the time, if any scribe who is a sofer, if they wanted to scribe the Torah, they must make a pilgrimage to the temple, the Beit HaMikdash, and there the Torah would be revealed to them so that they could copy it word for word from the copies that were in the Beit HaMikdash. And the purpose of this, according to Torah, is so that the original manuscript would bear record against them forever. So that if anyone changed a single word, if anyone added to the revelation, then they would pay the price according to the Torah. And this is very important because this is the standard of YaHuWaH's word. This is the standard for every single scribe who scribed the Kodesh word of YaHuWaH, his Torah. Though there were many copies that began to circulate throughout the entire reign of ancient Yehuda and Yisrael, the copy that maintained its integrity in the temple, in the Beit HaMikdash, it alone was considered the eternal word of YaHuWaH, and all others were just merely copies. The scroll that was copied must be copied according to the same exact standards that the original Torah was written in. So therefore, every single Torah is to be considered a duplicate of what the original really was. The scroll must be handwritten on gewil or cloth, which are animal hides from animals that had been slaughtered according to the method of shechita or kashrot. And this is very important because only kosher animals, clean animals, can be used for the process of making and scribing Sefer Torah, because it is a Kodesh document. And it is very important that all elements that are in a Sefer Torah come from Kodesh elements. Even the quill which is used to scribe the letters must come from the feather of a kosher animal. Specialized ink is used. This formula of making ink has been maintained for thousands of years within Yehudi history. When we find a manuscript that dates up to 3,000 years old, or maybe 2,500 years old, like we see the Dead Sea Scrolls and various potteries and the pieces that we find in the land and elsewhere in the lands of the diaspora, we find this information and we look at it, we examine it, we can still read it today, so we can appreciate the value of this process, because the Torah scrolls must be written on leather hides that would maintain for a long time using this specialized ink, so that we can still have this witness in the earth, to preserve it in the earth. There are 613 mitzvot, which are called commandments, literally meaning connections in the Hebrew language. That word mitzvot means to connect with, because the creator of the universe wants to connect with his people and be reflected in their actions. So it's really important to understand that aspect. Though there are 613 mitzvot, not all of the mitzvot could literally apply to every single individual. Some mitzvot only apply to females, for instance. Some only apply to males. Some only apply to the tribe of Levi. Some only apply to the sons of Aharon, the Kohanim, the priest, and some only apply to the Most High Priest, the Kohen Hagadol. So there are many things that must be understood according to the mitzvot, but every single one of these commandments, these connections, in some way, some shape or form, teach everyone something. And it reflects YaHuWaH in every single way. So though they may not literally apply, what is written even to people of other statuses that do not apply to one individual means something and reflects YaHuWaH in some way that could be understood by everyone. This is very important to understand and to grasp. Granted, the commands could be counted slightly more or less than 613. It just kind of depends on how one decides to separate out the commands founded within the Torah. However, this is the traditional count that has been in circulation for thousands of years. The agreed upon number is 613. Interestingly enough, every Hebrew letter has a numerical value. The word Torah has a value of 611. If you add the Taw, the Wal, the Resh, and the Hey together, their numerical value yields 611. In the Torah, there is a minimum of testimonies required to establish any matter. That number is 2. Before the Torah was established and written on the earth, we know of 2 specific covenants that were made. The covenant made with Noah and the covenant made with Abraham. And these covenants have been established within the 613 commands found within the Sefer Torah that YaHuWaH has established. This is very interesting. It's a very interesting piece of information in regard to the actual word Torah as we are to understand it. It reflects the commands of YaHuWaH, and it also reflects the idea of connecting to YaHuWaH. One of the many laws, one of the 613 laws that are in the Torah itself, is the law, the instruction to scribe a Torah scroll. In fact, it says in Devarim 31 verse 19, and now write down this song for yourselves. This was spoken to the children of Israel, that they were to write down this song. Now this song refers to Hazinu, which is the very next parsha in this particular reading. But you have to understand more, there's more to it. It says, write down this song for yourselves and teach it to the children of Israel. Put it in their mouths so that this song is to me for a witness against the children of Israel. Now, when they write down this song and they're to recite it and they're to know it, you have to understand that the Torah itself is a song. It is a melodic chant. Every single verse in the Torah is a song. It has a very specific melody, a very specific way that it has been sung, and this has remained the same for thousands of years. So when it says, literally here, write down this song, notice it is going to be a section of the Torah, but it's also telling them to write the Torah. But not only this verse, but when we look at Deuteronomy chapter 17, verse 18, it says, and it shall be when he sits on the throne of his reign. This is talking about the king who rule and reign in Israel, that he shall write for himself a copy of this Torah in a book, in a scroll, literally the word sefer. So it would be a Sefer Torah, like we were talking about earlier. from the one before the priest, the Levite. So he has to write a kosher Torah scroll, the king. And the reason is, it says in verse 19, and it shall be with him, and he shall read it all the days of his life, so that he learns to fear YaHuWaH, his Elohim, and guard all the words of this Torah and these laws to do them, so that his heart is not lifted up above his brothers, and so as not to turn aside from the command right or left, so that he prolongs his days and his reign, he and his children, in the midst of Yisrael. Also we see in Bereshith, Genesis chapter 49, verse 10, the scepter shall not turn aside from Yehudah, talking about the tribe that the Messiah would come through, Yehudah. This is where we get the word Judah and where we get the word Jew from this word, Yehudah. That the scepter shall not depart from Yehudah, nor a lawgiver. Now most versions actually say an inscriber. An inscriber, because the Hebrew word here can literally mean both. A lawgiver and an inscriber. From between his feet until Shiloh, which is a key word used for the Messiah. The Messiah has to come forth from the tribe of Yehudah, from the tribe that people call Judah. So therefore, this is talking about the Messiah, that there will not be one who will stop scribing Torah from the tribe of Yehudah until the Messiah comes. Now the word Shiloh is not talking about the first coming of Messiah. The word implies when he rules and reigns on the earth. When he rules and he reigns over the people with a rod of iron, according to what the scriptures has taught. We could read more into this and prove this, but it literally says in the very next part, it says, and to him is the obedience of the people. The time, or peoples, plural. Literally, when the Messiah came, the nations didn't bow down to him. They didn't serve him. The Romans nailed him to a stake. So therefore, this is not what this is speaking of. It's talking about a future context, when the Messiah comes back. So therefore, the tribe of Yehudah would be scribing the Torah for the entire time that it was within their possession when it was given to Moses. So therefore, when we look at this, we see that the children of Yehudah, the people who are called Jews today, have been inscribing the Torah, the Sophers. They've been scribing the Torah for the last 3,500 years, and there is no other people on the planet doing so. This is because they are the Yahudim that the scriptures speak of. It is because they were entrusted this task to scribe the Torah for the length of their generations until the Messiah comes and he rules and he reigns forever. So therefore, this is very key to understand. This is a part of the culture of the Yahudim. This is why the Yahudim are very literate. They read, they can write. They promoted this because it is promoted in the Torah. Because YaHuWaH said that the king even writes for himself a Torah, that the people have to read the Torah, that the Kohen has to read the Torah in the hearing of even the children and the strangers. YaHuWaH is promoting education. He's promoting the concept of learning constantly in the scriptures. And the Torah has to be written with precision. It has to be written with the utmost accuracy. A Torah scroll must meet very strict standards of production, or it is simply considered invalid, and that scribe's time was wasted. It takes nearly a year to write a Torah scroll, and it takes a lot of animal hides to write a Torah scroll. It's a very, very expensive endeavor. It is a very time-consuming endeavor, yet it has been done with great precision for the last 3,500 years. The calfskin or parchment on which the Hebrew Torah is written is mounted onto wooden rollers. These wooden rollers in Hebrew, in Ibrit, are called Etz Chaim. Etz Chaim means tree of life, literally. The Torah hangs on the tree of life. According to the Hebrew, the idea of what we see in the scriptures, the tree of life is obviously the tree that sustained Adam in the garden, that gave him eternal life. So the implications here are huge, that the Torah itself is a reflection of the tree of life in the Hebrew mindset. Each page or section of the hide is referred to as a leaf. a literal leaf. So we have the two sticks. The two sticks represents the Etz Chaim, the tree of life. There's two sticks, but yet singularly represents the one tree of life, which is pretty important when you think about the idea of the northern kingdom and the southern kingdom of Israel and Yehuda. But also when you think about the concept of eternal life and the kingdom and all these things. But the leaves are sewn together. And you can only sew the leaves together using elements from kosher animals such as sinews or hair. And a completed Torah scroll is therefore a picture of Etz Chaim, the tree of life. And what does the scripture say about Etz Chaim? It says that the tree of life is for the healing of the nations, plural.
In the book of Hazon, Revelation chapter 22, verse 2, we read, "In the middle of its street, on either side of the river, was the tree of life, Etz Chaim, which bore 12 fruits, each tree yielding its fruit every month. And the leaves of the tree were for the healing of the nations."
The Goyim, even the Gentiles, the nations, will be healed by the truth that comes forth from the Torah of YaHuWaH. The scriptures teach very clearly that in the end of time it shall be that the nations shall come to Jerusalem, to Yerushalayim, and they'll say, surely our forefathers inherited nothing but futility, nothing but lies and vanity. And they will see the truth when the Messiah sets up his kingdom. But what does the scriptures themselves say? Melech David, who is King David, wrote many songs to YaHuWaH. And the very first song in his composition, when we look at the Psalms or the Tehillim, in Psalm chapter 1, verse 2 through 3 says, "But his delight is in the Torah of YaHuWaH, and he meditates in his Torah day and night. For he shall be as a tree planted by the rivers of water, that yields its fruit in its season, and whose leaf does not wither, and whatever he does shall prosper." In Mishlei chapter 3 verse 18, it says it, speaking about the wisdom found in Torah, because chapter 3 begins, "My son, do not depart from my Torah," and then it expounds upon the wisdom in it. It says it, the Torah, is a tree of life to those taking hold of her, and Baruch are all those who retain her. Again, that's Mishlei, Proverbs chapter 3 verse 18. Further, in the book of Revelation, Hazon chapter 22 verse 14, it says, "Baruch are those doing his commands, so that the authority shall be theirs unto the tree of life, and to enter through the gates into the city." So therefore, again, we see that the whole concept of the tree of life, the concept of the Torah itself, is to bring YaHuWaH's people back to him. It is the target that we should be shooting for. And remember, anything less than that is chatat. It is sin. It is a missing of the target, is what the scriptures teach in the Hebrew. So this is all extremely important to understand, because clearly we see in the book of Revelation that the whole idea of the tree of life is there to bring about eternal life for the people, that is for the healing of the nations. When we look at other verses, there's so much information in the scriptures on this subject, but many do not realize that the Hebrew scrolls, the Torah scrolls, that they are literally a reflection of this concept of the tree of life. In the Sefer Torah, in the written Torah scroll, we see that there are 5 books. These 5 books are Bereshith, which has been called Genesis. Bereshith translates in the beginning. It's taken from the very first phrase of the book, and it's been labeled Genesis in the Greek language, Genesis implying the beginnings or origins. This section talks about the creation of the universe, the great flood that took place, and also relates the lives of the patriarchs, the matriarchs, and the entire Israelite nation, in which they begin with Abraham and Sarah, and they end with Yahuseph, who is called Joseph, in the land of Mitzrayim. Then the book continues on with Shemoth. So though it's one written scroll, again, it's 5 separate books, as we call it, or 5 separate sections, and Shemoth is seen as the second book. Shemoth means names in Hebrew, but in Greek it has been called Exodus, which means like a departure. This section of the Torah relates the narrative of the Israelites and their bondage in Mitzrayim, their journey to Mount Sinai, the giving of the 10 words, which are called the 10 Commands, and their experience in the wilderness. The next section of Torah is Vayikra. Vayikra is interpreted, and he called. But it is called Leviticus in Greek, meaning those things that pertain to the Levites. This book deals mostly with the matters pertaining to the Kohanim, such as ritual, sacrifice, atonement, and purity. The next section is Bamidbar. Bamidbar translates in the wilderness. The Greek language has called this the book of Numbers. Bamidbar discusses the Israelites' travels in the desert as they venture towards the promised land. The next section, the final section, is called Devarim. Devarim means words. The Greek language calls this book Deuteronomy, or Upper Discourse. This is the final book of the Torah. Devarim recounts the Israelites' journey according to the words of Moshe and ends with his death just before they enter the promised land. A Sefer Torah contains 304,805 otiyot, or letters. The word sofer, from which we get the word scribe. The word sofer can also mean a counter, because he has to count each and every letter of the Torah Scroll. The sofer has to be very cautious with his work. The Yahudim of Yemen, they have 9 additional letters in their Torah scrolls than the Yahudim from Ashkenaz and Sephardad, which are called the Ashkenazim and the Sephardim. Yahudim who live in the Middle East are called Mizrahim, and the Yahudim of Yemen are called Mizrahim often. But they have 9 additional letters in their Torah scrolls, and sometimes people are a little confused by this because they hear everything that we say about the exactness and the accuracy of the Torah, and then they're like, well, how could the Yemenite Yahudim, how could they have additional letters in their Torah scrolls? But this is a common phenomenon in the Hebrew language. We attribute this to what is called full and effective word forms. These happen thousands of times in the text. Anybody who reads Hebrew knows this. It doesn't matter whether you're reading the Masoretic text or whether you're looking in the Dead Sea Scrolls. The concept of full and effective word forms happen thousands and thousands of times in the Hebrew text, all the text. This phenomenon is kind of similar, but not really. It's kind of similar to Old English spellings versus modern English spellings. For instance, if you look at the way that we used to write the word defend in English, it was written with an E on the end. Now, in today's modern English, we drop the E off the end because it's not necessary. You can still come up with the pronunciation defend without the E on the end. Also, the word which, like if you were trying to choose which one of something, you were going to choose or whatever, the word which used to have an E on the end. And there's so many spellings that are different now from modern English to the older English. But which used to have the E on the end, now it's dropped. It's not required. You can still get the same pronunciation. And this is kind of similar to what we see in the Hebrew text. Also, certain things like shortening words down. Like when you use the word DR to refer to a doctor. When you see DR period, that doesn't spell doctor. But when you see it, you know that's what it means. There are similar things that take place in the Hebrew language. And again, we call these full and effective word forms. The full spelling would be that spelling that contains all of the vowel letters necessary to achieve the correct pronunciation. The defective spelling often will take out one of those vowel letters, and it's always usually the yod, the hey, or mostly the waw. Actually, it's usually yod and waw, but sometimes the hey, sometimes the aleph. These letters will be dropped. So it's not really a big deal, because when you read the Yemenite Torah scroll, it is the exact same revelation. Just a few differences in spelling. But those spelling differences do not change what those words mean. And those 9 instances are in front of you now. You can look at those and you can study those in your free time. The only reason I'm bringing that up is so that we understand the fullness of how exact the Torah really is. Because in actuality, the tribe of Yehuda, the entire southern kingdom, which wasn't just Yehuda, by the way, the southern kingdom of Judah or Yehuda also incorporated Levi and Benjamin, who is Benjamin. They have been in the diaspora for nearly 2,000 years, scattered all over the land, scribing the Torah in their individual communities, separated sometimes by thousands of miles. But yet their Torah scrolls are almost exactly the same, and the only difference being 9 different spellings, just 9 words, where it's just one extra letter that doesn't even change the meaning. I mean, that is incredible. No other people on the planet have been so accurate with any document that you can think of. It's just, there's nothing in existence like the Torah. It's just, there's nothing out there as accurate that has been scribed in this way. So we can trust the Torah scrolls that we have today. We know that they are accurate. The text has been duplicated precisely by trained Sopharim, who are scribes, for over 3,500 years. The effort of scribing a Torah scroll may take as long as 1.5 years. It can take up to 2 years. It just depends on what events transpire. The shortest being about a year, but it is a lengthy process. If any error occurs in transcription of the Sefer Torah, that Torah scroll may be rendered pasul, which means it is invalid. It is not considered kosher. Unless the mistake is very minor and it can be totally corrected. And that correction has to be totally legible to the reader. So if there's just one thing, one little mistake, that entire document is not considered for usage at all. So that's something really important to take into consideration, because again, there is just no other custom, no other tradition within no other people on the planet that has had this type of accuracy and precision, and that is how we know the accuracy of the Torah that YaHuWaH has given, because it has been carefully guarded by the Yahudim for over 3,500 years. The scrolls and fragments that were found in Qumran by the Dead Sea, referred to as the Dead Sea Scrolls, demonstrate that there are no major differences between the written Torah today and the Torah written 2,500 years ago, which are how old most of the Dead Sea Scroll documents are. Those differences that may occur are much like the 9 spelling differences found in the Yemenite Torah versus the Ashkenazi and Sephardic Torah. So in other words, there's barely a difference. It's just word forms. It's just word forms. For instance, when you read in the Masoretic text, you see Elohim has no letter YaHuWaH. When you read in the Dead Sea Scrolls, you will see that the word Elohim has the letter YaHuWaH. When you look at the name YaHuWaH, you will see in the Masoretic text, there are 216 times where it does not have the letter YaHuWaH, but it has the vowel points, the kibbutz vowel points there to let you know there was a YaHuWaH. 2 places it has a YaHuWaH. These are called full and defective word forms. In the Dead Sea Scrolls, you see the full spelling more often. And you see the shorter spelling less often. But in the Masoretic text, it just depends on which word. Sometimes you'll have the full spelling more. Sometimes you have the full spelling less. Like King David's name is written 2 different ways. 500 sometimes with the yod, 500 sometimes without the yod. I mean, so this happens over and over and over. These are the small differences we're talking about. So when anybody's trying to scrutinize the text and tell us that we don't know that the Torah or the scriptures are accurate, or we can't trace and find out how accurate they are, these are myths. These are not realities. These are not realities. The largest differences, again, are generally found in the full and defective word forms, but you also see differences in the style of script. In modern Hebrew, the script is generally recognizable. Most people recognize the box letter Hebrew that we see today, which is literally called Lashon Ashurit. But the more ancient form is what people call Paleo-Hebrew. This is referred to in Hebrew as Lashon Ivrit, literally the tongue of Hebrew. Okay, so the differences between the two only exist in the forms of the letters. Grammatically, modern Hebrew, as we find in the Masoretic text and on the Torah scrolls today, grammatically it is the same Hebrew as the Paleo-Hebrew. There's no grammatical differences. The only differences that exist, again, are the shapes of the letters. Okay, so I don't want anybody to get confused about this subject. The Paleo-Hebrew is important. Yes, it's important, but the modern Hebrew is really not different. The grammar between the two are more similar than Old English and the English that is spoken today. More similar. The vocabulary is the same, the grammar is the same. Only difference is the style of letters. Whereas if you look at today's English, you see that the grammar is totally different. Spellings are totally different. You know, the word forms, everything there's major differences in the way that we speak today in English and the way English was spoken just several hundred years ago. Whereas in Hebrew, there's not that many differences, especially in the Yemenite dialect of Hebrew. The Yemenite Yahudim have maintained a more accurate dialect of Hebrew, of Ibrit. Though the shape of letters may be different between the two, again, the grammar is basically the same. The reason that the modern Hebrew exists today is largely attributed to Ezra HaSofer, Ezra the scribe, the same Ezra who brought the Yahudim out of the land of Persia. Remember, the Israelites didn't keep Yahuwah's way. The northern kingdom went into Assyria. The southern kingdom went into Babylon, but Babylon was conquered by Persia. So the Yahudim were in the Persian Empire, and not all the Yahudim left Persia. In fact, there are a great amount of Yahudim who still live in Iran today, which Iran was Persia. You know, that's what it was called. Today it's called the Republic of Iran, but formerly it is Persia. And the Arabs in the area will all point out to the fact that the Yahudim who've been living there have been living there since the Babylonian captivity. So anyway, so there's not a whole lot of differences in the two. When you look at a modern Torah scroll, the modern Torah scrolls are written with 42 lines of text per column. The Yemenite Yahudim use 50. The reliability of the Hebrew text is considered foundational down to the last letter. For this reason, translations or transcriptions are frowned upon for formal use, and transcribing is done with extreme and painstaking care. Since the invention of the printing press, the text of the Torah is commonly printed and bound in book form for non-formal usage. When in a book form, the text is known as Humash. Humash literally means 5 parts. For the 5 books that were given to Moshe, which is often accompanied by commentaries or translations, etc. These types of things find their way into the printed text. So this is a way that YaHuWaH has used to get the scriptures out to the entire world. Today you can get Hebrew scriptures really easily. You can get translations of the scriptures. Even the worst translations still have a lot of truth in them. I mean, you can buy a King James version for $1 in most dollar stores in America. You can find one in your hotels and your different, they're everywhere. So YaHuWaH has used the printing press to get the information out that his word is accurate, that it can hold up to scrutiny, up against the test of time, that there has been no major changes. You can check the Dead Sea Scrolls and you'll see there are no major differences. If you look at the great Isaiah scroll that was found in the Dead Sea Scrolls and you compare that to the Masoretic text Isaiah scroll, the only real differences you're going to see are the differences again in the spellings. There might be more yods, more letter walls in the Dead Sea Scroll version than you see in the Masoretic text. But the same revelation is there. It's there. So we know that the text has not been altered because the Dead Sea Scrolls, again, date up to at least 2,500 years. So when you check all the documents and you look at everything, there's overwhelming proof of the accuracy of the Torah. The writings of the Torah are generally seen in combination with the rest of the writings of the prophets and the Psalms and all those things. When we refer to it in combination with all of those things, we use the acronym Tanakh. Tanakh generally refers to Torah for the letter T. The Nabim means prophets. That's where we get the N sound. And the K, or the hard C sound, comes from Ketubim, which means writings. You take the T, the N, and the K, you put them together, you get Tanakh. It's an acronym. It refers to the Torah, the prophets, and the writings. But depending on who's talking, the Tanakh might be called the Hebrew Bible, the word Bible coming from the word Biblos, which means books. It also has some pagan, correlations. So a lot of people don't feel comfortable using it. I don't generally use it as well, but Bible just literally means the book, or you can use the pagan connotations, whatever. But different people are going to call it that. That's the point. Some people are going to call it the Old Testament because the word testament, I guess they should have used the word covenant if they were going to use it at all. But they're saying it in contrast to the Brit Hadashah, the renewed covenant. So they're saying this one's old, this one's new. I don't agree with using that terminology. You never see that in Scripture, by the way. You actually will never see it called Old Testament anywhere. But I'm just trying to help people who are hearing this for the first time, who don't know what Tanakh means, to kind of get an understanding of when we say Tanakh, this is what people sometimes call the Hebrew Bible, or they call it the Old Testament. And it stands for, again, the Torah, the 5 books of Moshe, the Nebaim, which are the prophets, and the Ketubim, which are those things like the Psalms, the Proverbs, etc. So the oldest existing complete Tanakh is the Aleppo Codex. Now, it was complete for a long time, but unfortunately now a huge portion of the Torah is missing. So now, technically, the oldest is the Leningrad Codex, but usually people still call the Aleppo Codex the oldest full document because it was known to be full document for a very long time. The Lenin Codex comes from Yahudim, which is pretty important to note because there's a lot of hatred towards them today, but they have preserved the text. So if you're reading a Bible, a Old Testament, a Tanakh, whatever you're reading, you are using the text that comes from the Leningrad Codex. So you can thank the Yahudim for providing that information for you, because if they had not, most of you all over the world, the nations who are awakening to YaHuWaH and awakening to this information, you simply would not know what a Torah is or what Tanakh is. It just wouldn't exist. You wouldn't know. So the Torah is the constitution for the Am HaSefer, the people of the scroll, the people of the book. The Torah itself forbids, again, any adding to or subtracting from the text. According to the Torah, not even a prophet or a king has this power to add or take away from the original text that's housed within the Ark of the Covenant. Therefore, the revelation of Torah is meant to be an eternal revelation that cannot be and will not be altered. That is why Yeshayahu the prophet, Isaiah, spoke concerning the end times. And he said in Isaiah, Yeshayahu chapter 2, verse 2 through 3, "And it shall be in the latter days that the mountain of the house of YaHuWaH is established on the top of the mountains and shall be exalted above all the hills. And all nations shall flow to it. And many people shall come and say, Come and let us go up to the mountain of YaHuWaH, to the house of the Elohim of Yaakov, and let him teach us his ways, and let us walk in his paths. For out of Zion comes forth the Torah and the word of YaHuWaH from Yerushalayim." Now this is understood to speak explicitly concerning the time that people call the Messianic era, the time that the Messiah, the Mashiach, rules and reigns on the earth, where he sets up the kingdom of YaHuWaH on the earth. And it shall be in that time, in the latter days, that the mountain of the house of YaHuWaH is established on top of the mountains and shall be exalted above all the hills, and all the nations are going to flow to it. And when they go there, they want to hear the Torah, because it says, "For out of Zion comes forth Torah and the word of YaHuWaH from Yerushalayim." This is the time that we need to understand. So Mashiach, the Messiah, is the ultimate Torah teacher. Some people use this terminology, Torah teacher, to try to mean like it's a bad thing, a negative connotation, or, oh, you're just a Torah teacher, or all this or that. The Mashiach, HaMashiach, Yahushua, is the ultimate Torah teacher. He will teach the perfection of Torah. He will give us the ultimate commentary, the ultimate explanation. He will give us the ultimate understanding of the Torah that has ever been. It will be so crystal clear when he sets up his kingdom, when he sets up Malkut YaHuWaH on the earth. The kingdom is coming. The constitution for that kingdom is the Torah. So the Torah will go forth from Yerushalayim. That is why David says in 119 of Tehillim, verse 174, I have longed for your deliverance, O YaHuWaH, and your Torah is my delight. In Hebrew, that's ta'abti le Yeshua teka. YaHuWaH wa Torah teka sha'ashuai. But if we look at it literally, it says here, ta'abti, I have longed for le Yeshua teka, your deliverance, your Yeshua. Now, that word Yeshua is part of the name of the Messiah. Le Yeshua teka means unto your deliverance, YaHuWaH. Here we see YaHuWaH and Yeshua right together, right beside each other, because when you use the Messiah's name, Yahushua, you are literally saying YaHuWaH Yeshua. You are literally saying YaHuWaH's deliverance, YaHuWaH's redemption. YaHuWaH has saved. YaHuWaH will save. YaHuWaH will redeem. He has redeemed. It means all of these things. It's embedded in the text over and over and over. It's embedded in the Torah even. Because if you believe that the Torah is an eternal document and you read the text, you will see that the man Moshe, though YaHuWaH said that there had not been a prophet like him and will not be a prophet like unto him until Messiah comes, that he speaks to him face to face, that he doesn't speak through Moshe through a dream or a vision, but he speaks directly to him. Though this was the case, he could not lead the children of Israel into the promised land. Yahushua ben Nun had to lead the children into the promised land, the man that you have known as Joshua the son of Nun. And he has this name, Yahushua, just as the Messiah, our Mashiach, the King, has the name Yahushua, because he will lead his people to the promised land through the redemption that is going to take place, the restoration that is going to happen when the Mashiach sets up the reign of YaHuWaH on the earth. Yahushua spoke with his own words in Matityahu chapter 5, verse 17. Do not think. I mean, that literally means don't even allow it to come into your mind. Do not think that I have come to destroy the Torah or the prophets. I did not come to destroy, but to complete. Some versions say to fulfill, but none of them say to destroy, to put away, to rid the earth of the Torah. Never does a version say that. Even the worst of the versions out there are going to give you a generalized idea. When you have a puzzle and you put the final piece in the puzzle, you didn't destroy it, you fulfilled it. That is what the Mashiach is doing. He is clearly telling us that he is bringing the completion of this puzzle, of this entire idea of redemption that YaHuWaH has laid out and spoke through the prophets. He is saying, I haven't come to destroy these matters, because these matters speak of me. He says this several times in the scriptures, that these matters in the Torah speak of him. But he says clearly, I did not come to destroy, but to complete. For truly I say to you, till the heaven and the earth pass away, one jot or one tittle shall by no means pass from the Torah till all be done. You can simply walk outside and see that the heavens have not passed, the earth has not passed. YaHuWaH's Torah remains. Not a single jot, not a single tittle will be removed. How come this is not taught by those people who profess to be Gentile Christians? They never point to the sovereignty of the Father. They never point to the sovereignty of YaHuWaH. He is the King of the universe. He has sent his Son, Shar Shalom, the Prince of Peace, to rule and reign on the earth. He will rule and reign. But he will rule and reign according to his Father's decrees, according to the Torah. YaHuWaH is perfect. He is righteous. Everything he says is righteous. He is the definition of righteousness. Without YaHuWaH, there is no such thing as righteousness. There is no such thing as life. There's nothing. YaHuWaH is the giver of the redemption. That is why Yahushua's name, the Messiah's name, means YaHuWaH, the Father. YaHuWaH saves. YaHuWaH redeems. The Son's name gives praise to the Father. When he taught his people how to pray, he told them to pray Abinu Shabbat Shamayim. Yikadesh Shemka, which means our Father who is in the heavens. Set apart is your name. That is how we're to pray. He did not teach us to pray to him. He taught us to pray to the Father in his name. It's important to understand this. He even says further, so not one jot or tittle can pass from the Torah. According to the Messiah, the Mashiach, not one single jot or tittle can be removed from Torah till all is fulfilled. But then listen to what he says further. Whoever then breaks one of the least of these commands, which commands? The commands in the Torah and the prophets, and teaches men so, he shall be called the least in the reign of the heavens. But whoever does and teaches them, he shall be called great in the reign of the heavens. Now listen, this is one thing that people don't understand. I think a lot of people who are teachers think that they can somehow weasel around the Torah because they think that somehow, because they can be considered least in the kingdom, that means they'll still be in the kingdom. But what you don't seem to understand is when you read the scriptures, there is going to be many things that take place prophetically in the scriptures to establish the kingdom. And one of those things will be the great destruction of the people who transgress YaHuWaH's covenant. And they will burn in Gan Hinnom, which is called Gehenna. People call it the lake of fire. And they will be destroyed for breaking the covenant. And it says clearly in Yeshayahu chapter 66 that those who are redeemed will look upon those corpses of those men who transgressed the covenant of YaHuWaH. So when he's talking about the least, we will be calling you the least because you won't even be in the kingdom for breaking YaHuWaH's Torah and teaching other people to do so. Now this doesn't mean that you have to be perfect. Perfection is what we are called to. It is a process YaHuWaH is working out in people. People make mistakes. Great men in scriptures made mistakes. But when you make the mistake, when you don't shoot the target, when you don't aim properly and hit the Torah the way that the Torah is teaching us to do, when you don't apply these things and you mess up, YaHuWaH has made a way, but that doesn't mean that you have to live in sin. Living in sin, that, if you choose to live in sin, that's a whole different story. But if you mess up, if you make a mistake, YaHuWaH has made a way for you to be forgiven through the blood of Mashiach, formerly through the blood of animals. But now, a more perfect way, through the blood of Yahushua HaMashiach, there can be a great redemption of souls before the last days, before the great harvest takes place. But we need to understand the role of Mashiach, because Mashiach has a very lofty position, a very high position. It is a position that should not be underestimated. He is the word of YaHuWaH. That is what the scriptures teach. YaHuChanan chapter 1 verse 14 says, and the word became flesh and pitched his tent among us, and we saw his esteem as of one only brought forth of a father, complete in favor and in truth. If Messiah is the word, what word is it speaking about? In those times, brothers and sisters, the only concept that this could be referring to is the Torah. The Torah is the word. It is the instruction. It is the principles. The words Torah and Dabar, which mean word and instruction, they are interchangeable with each other countless times in the Torah, so many times that it's not even practical to go through them right now. But you can do your own proper studies and you will see that this is in fact true. So the Messiah is the word made flesh. He is the Torah made flesh. I don't understand how so many people miss this who claim to be following the Hebrew Messiah today. I mean, many people, throw around these Hebrew words. They say they're in some type of Hebrew roots movement, or they're in a sacred name movement, or something to that effect. But somehow there's still many people who are not making the connection that YaHuWaH's Torah and his word are the same. When the word became flesh, brothers and sisters, friends and strangers all over the world who are hearing my voice, understand that means that the Torah became flesh. The actual decrees, the commandments, the laws, the principles, all embodied within a man. Messiah is the word. He is the Torah. Before the Torah ever was written, the Torah existed. Just as before the Messiah was ever born onto the earth, he existed as the Malach YaHuWaH, as the Malach Habrit, the messenger of the covenant, the messenger of YaHuWaH himself, the messenger Hapanaim of the faces of YaHuWaH, This is what the scriptures teach, that he's the messenger of the presence of YaHuWaH, and he is the word of YaHuWaH. He existed just like the Torah existed. And then the Torah was written on flesh. And then the Messiah became flesh. So you see how both concepts, Messiah is not just a picture of the eternal Torah. He's also a picture of the actual Sefer Torah, the scroll of the Torah. It's really important to understand this, because when we look at the teachings of Messiah, we call these teachings the glad tidings. This word glad tidings in Hebrew is bashar. Bashar is the exact same word for flesh or skins. The exact same word. So now take this into consideration, that the word was imprinted onto the flesh. It was imprinting onto hides, onto skins. A kosher Torah scroll has to be written on hides, not paper, not just some papyrus. It had to be written on hides for durability, because it's a living book, so it had to be written on skins. That word for flesh or skin is bashar. It's the same word, glad tidings. So the Torah can be considered bashar. It can be considered glad tidings as well. And not only this, but remember what I said previously, that the Torah scrolls are bound to wooden dowels, which are called Etz Chaim, or the tree of life. Just as the Messiah himself, who is the Word, who became flesh, was nailed to the tree. And that tree is symbolic of the tree of life. A whole lot of symbolism. Just like Moshe, he anointed the Torah scroll. That word anointed is mashka. That's where we get the word Mashiach from. The Messiah himself will be anointed. He was already anointed by Yahuwah's Ruach HaKodesh. But he will also be anointed by the Kodesh oil, the Shemen, that will be applied to him. That is why he will be called Mashiach. Every king of Israel and Yehuda were anointed with this oil. It was very important. Yahushua will also be. But the scroll was anointed, and it was also sprinkled with blood, the blood of the covenant. And in the same manner, Yahushua, who was nailed to the tree, a picture of the Etz Chaim, the tree of life, a picture of the Torah scroll, he also poured out his blood. So we see these correlations, that Yahushua was not just a picture of the eternal Torah before it was written, but he, in his existence on the earth as a man, is a reflection of the actual scroll of the Torah itself. So you have to understand this. This unlocks so many mysteries of YaHuWaH's word, so many mysteries of his Malkut, his kingdom, his reign that is coming. It's very important to understand. The Torah is the government of YaHuWaH. YaHuWaH is the sovereign of the universe. He is the creator. The Messiah's very name, again, it means that YaHuWaH saves. It attributes all salvation and deliverance to YaHuWaH. The point of the written and the eternal Torah made flesh is to direct our submission to the Malkut, the kingdom of YaHuWaH, the reign of YaHuWaH, the Father, the Abba. For this reason, those who profess Messiah should be engaged in studying the Torah and applying the kingdom principles, those Malkut principles that can be found within its leaves or pages. Remember, they're called leaves in the Torah scroll, because the leaves are for the healing of the nations. The leaves are for healing from the tree of life. This is all important. Messiah will not change the Torah. When he comes, he will teach and proclaim all of the righteous words of Torah and bring our understanding to completion. That is why he said he did not come to destroy, but to fulfill. Mashiach spoke in Matthew chapter 4, verse 4, and Luke chapter 4, verse 4. These words, he said, man does not live by bread alone, but every word that comes from the mouth of YaHuWaH. Now, many Christians are under the impression that these are the Messiah's original words. These words are just some original, something that he just spoke out of nowhere, that he just came up with. But in fact, this is a reference from the Torah itself in Deuteronomy, Devarim chapter 8, verse 3, where it literally says, man does not live by bread alone, but by every word that comes from the mouth of YaHuWaH. Every word, every word. That means not a single word is exempt. When people talk about the righteousness of the law, they try to say, well, he taught the righteousness of the law. Every single word in the Torah is righteous because every single word that's in the Torah came from the Creator, and there is no one righteous but Him. He is the only one. He is the expressed idea of righteousness. Without YaHuWaH, there is no concept of righteousness. YaHuWaH is righteous. So everything He says is righteous. His Mashiach is righteous. His prophets were righteous. The people that He chose for Himself were called to be a righteous people. And they were called to not live by bread alone, but every word, every single word. You may think when you're reading the Torah that some of this seems boring. There's just a list of names. Those names all mean something. When you see a list of numbers and you're thinking, well, this isn't important, I'm just going to skim over this. Every single word, every single number, it all means something. You may not see it right now, but when you begin to dig and you begin to study, you will discover that every single letter in the Torah, every single letter is a word. And every single letter has a numerical value. Every single letter has a revelation. Every single word has a deeper meaning. Everything is so deep in YaHuWaH's word that we should be constantly searching it out, constantly going deeper into His word. We should not settle for less. Again, Torah means to hit a target. The word for sin, chatat, literally means to miss a target, as I explained previously. Yahushua's beloved disciple, his beloved Talmid, Yahuchanan, who is called John, in 1 Yahuchanan chapter 3, verse 4, states, everyone doing sin breaks the Torah. For sin, chatat, is the breaking of Torah, which is clear when you understand the Hebrew words, when you understand that yara, the word that gives us Torah, means to hit a target. And then when you understand that chatat means to miss a target, it's pretty clear that sin is breaking or missing the point, missing the Torah. But since some people didn't fully understand this, it's reiterated in the scriptures, and it says clearly, as plain as day that it can be, that sin is the breaking of the Torah. People need to understand what sin is, because many people are living a very drab, boring Christian lifestyle, and they think that they're living a life of kodeshah, or what they call holiness. But in fact, they're actually living a life of sin, and they don't even realize it. You know, just simple things like celebrating pagan holidays, eating unclean foods. This is barely scratching the surface, just very simple stuff. Breaking the Sabbath, all these things. So it's helpful for liberation, because the Sabbath is a liberating experience. The idea of how we should eat, these are all liberating concepts that free us from the slavery of bondage to the system, from the bondage of religion, from the bondage of the world, from the bondage of all these evils and wickedness. YaHuWaH has told us how to be separated, set apart, so that we can connect. Remember that word mitzvah, commandment, means to connect. He wants us to connect with Him. So that's the whole point. Now, many people talk about the curse of the Torah. So I'm going to kind of wrap this up and I'm going to talk a little bit about the curse of the Torah and the barakah, or what people call blessing, the bestowing of favor that the Torah gives us for observation. Deuteronomy, one of the books within the scroll of Torah, says in Devarim chapter 27, verse 26, cursed is he who does not establish the words of this Torah, and all the people shall say Amen. Amen means to affirm. They'll say truly. That's what it means. So when Yahushua says truly, truly, he's saying Amen, Amen, or he's affirming the fact. That's what the word means, to affirm. They affirm this. So the entire nation of Israel, all the tribes, they all agreed to this. So if they broke the Torah, YaHuWaH gave a long list of horrible things that would and have taken place to them. In Deuteronomy 28, verse 58, we get the revelation for why the Torah was even given in the first place. It says, if you do not guard to do all the words of this Torah that are written in this book, to fear this esteemed and awesome name, YaHuWaH your Elohim. So the entire reason of the giving of Torah is to esteem the name of YaHuWaH. That means to honor it, to respect it. That means to treat it in a Kodesh fashion. It shouldn't be polluted. It shouldn't be misused. It should be called upon, but it shouldn't be taken in vain. It's very important to understand that YaHuWaH's name is to be called upon. There are some people who call upon the name of YaHuWaH in these last days, but they don't understand the Torah and they're not keeping the principles. So therefore, they truly aren't guarding his name. Because remember what I said earlier? Shem does not just mean the way it's pronounced, even though it does heavily mean that. It also means his character, his namesake. So his namesake are all the words that he's ever spoken, all the words that have ever been given to his prophets, and surely the Torah are part of those words. There's no way you can take that away from it. But he says, if you do not guard to do all the words of this Torah that are written in this book, to fear this esteemed and awesome name, YaHuWaH your Elohim, then YaHuWaH shall bring upon you and your descendants extraordinary plagues, great and lasting plagues, and grievous and lasting sicknesses. And this has happened to the children of Israel. That's the reason that the northern kingdom was exiled to Assyria. That's the reason that the southern kingdom was exiled into Babylon, and that they had to be within the Persian Empire. And that's the reason that they're still scattered even to this day. I mean, there's still scattered Yahudim all over the world. Because of this, because of the curse that we see in the Torah, that they would be kicked out of their land. All these different things. I don't have time to read all those. They're so lengthy, so you have to do your own study for that. But in Devarim 30 verse 10, it's not all bad, because Yahuwah says, if you obey the voice of YaHuWaH your Elohim, to guard his commands and his laws which are written in the book of the Torah, if you turn back to YaHuWaH your Elohim with all your heart and with all your being, for this command which I am commanding you today, it is not too hard for you, nor is it too far off. It is not in the Shemayim, in the heavens, to say, who shall go up or ascend into the heavens for us and bring it down to us and cause us to hear it so that we do it. Nor is it beyond the sea to say, who shall go over the sea for us and bring it to us and cause us to hear it so that we do it. For the word is very near you, in your mouth and in your heart to do it. See, I have set before you today life and tob, or what people call great or good, and death and ra, or evil. Love YaHuWaH your Elohim, to walk in his ways and to guard his commands and laws and his right rulings, and you shall live and increase. And YaHuWaH your Elohim shall barak you. He shall, quote unquote, bless you. He will bestow favor and gifts upon you in the land which you go to possess. But if your hearts turn away and you do not obey, and you shall be drawn away and shall bow down to other mighty ones and serve them, I have declared to you today that you shall certainly perish, and you shall not prolong your days in the land which you are passing over the Jordan to enter and possess. I have called the heavens and the earth as witness today against you. I have set before you life and death, the barakah and the curse, which is the blessing, people call the blessing and the curse. Therefore you choose life, choose chai, so that you live, both you and your seed, to love YaHuWaH your Elohim, to obey his voice, and to cling to him. For he is your life and length of days, to dwell in the land which YaHuWaH swore to your fathers, to Abraham, to Yitzhak, and to Jacob, to give to them. So you see here how important it is. Moshe says within the Torah, there is life and death. There is the barakah, there is also the curse. If you don't keep the Torah, you're going to be cursed. The scriptures teach clearly that the nations have been cursed because the Torah was given and they still walk after their waywardness. That is what the scriptures teach. So therefore, if you are not adhering to the scriptures, you are in fact cursed. The scriptures tell us also, according to the mouth of Solomon, Shlomo, in his Proverbs, he says that the man who turns his ear from hearing the words of the Torah, even his prayer is to'abah, or abominable, disgusting before YaHuWaH. YaHuWaH will not even consider the words of your mouth if you are not considering his Torah. You have to understand this is very important. That is not to say that a person who is in sin cannot make a cry out to YaHuWaH for repentance. That means a person who will not hear it, who will not take it into heart, the Torah, they won't be heard. So when you hear Christian pastors, or it doesn't even matter, they don't have to be Christian pastors, they could be any kind of, they could be using different names, even using YaHuWaH's name, it doesn't even matter. If they're teaching not to keep the Torah, just write that person off and keep going. You don't have time. We're in the last days. We don't have time for that nonsense because we know by definition that they are a false prophet and that YaHuWaH is not even hearing their prayers. He's not even listening to them. So we shouldn't even waste our time with that nonsense in these last days. There's a great awakening taking place, and to even consider those words are to take many steps in the wrong direction. So we need to be as close to YaHuWaH as possible. After all, it only makes sense. We know the Torah is a covenant. And after all, those who say that they are in the New Testament or New Covenant acknowledge that they are a part of a covenant. But what covenant? Yirmiyahu, Jeremiah chapter 31, verse 33, and the book of Hebrews in two different places tells us, "For this is the covenant I shall make with the house of Israel after those days, declares YaHuWaH. I shall put my Torah in their inward parts." That's a long ways from being done away with. That's a long ways from being destroyed. He's taking his Torah, what was written on the hides of animals, and now he is writing it in the heart of his people. That's a part of the Brit Hadashah, the renewed covenant. It says, "I shall put my Torah in their inward parts and shall write it on their hearts. And I shall be their Elohim and they shall be my people." This is the Brit Hadashah. The word Hadashah means to renew. Brit means a covenant. The Mashiach did not come to make a new covenant, something that was completely and just out of the ordinary for YaHuWaH. He came to establish and re-establish a renewed covenant, the Brit Hadashah. It's very important because he takes the same word, Torah, this word. So when you read in your English version, it's going to say, "I will write my laws." But Torah is very specific, as we've already seen. He's going to write his Torah on the scroll of your heart. And if you are walking in his ways, you are going to be obedient to what it says. Very simple stuff. If you are a part of this covenant, you need to understand what it teaches. Shemoth chapter 12 verse 49 says, "One Torah, only one law, shall there be for him who is a sojourner, or for him who is homeborn rather, and unto the stranger and the sojourner who sojourns among you." So there's only one law. It doesn't matter if you're the homeborn, if you're a native born to Israel. It doesn't matter if you're a stranger. It doesn't matter if you're a sojourner. Only one Torah is for all people. Only one Torah. Numbers chapter 15 verse 16. "One Torah and one manner shall be for you and for the stranger who sojourns with you." So there is no distinction. One law for all people. Revelation chapter 14 verse 12. "Here is the endurance of the Kodesh ones. Here are those guarding the commands of Elohim and the belief of Yahushua." Guarding the commands of Elohim. The commands of Elohim, all the commands of Elohim are found within Torah. The prophets, remember, they could not add to or subtract from. Ezekiel didn't have the power. Daniel didn't have the power. Jeremiah, Isaiah, which none of those are actually their names, but I'm giving you the names so you'll probably understand. But those men did not have the power to change Torah. Even the Messiah of Israel does not have the authority to change what his Father has already said because he's the Word. That means he's in one accord with his Father. He's not going to disagree. No disagreements to be made. So therefore, if you want to be one of the Kodesh ones, if you claim to believe in Messiah, what it says in Revelation, not the Tanakh, but in Revelation, it says, "Here is the endurance of the Kodesh ones. Here are those guarding the commands of Elohim and the belief of Yahushua." Revelation chapter 22 verse 14 says a very similar thing. "Baruch are those doing his commands, so that the authority shall be theirs unto Etz Chaim, the tree of life, and to enter through the gates into the city." But listen to this. "But outside are the dogs, and those who enchant with drugs, and those who whore, and those who murder, and the idolaters, and all who love and do falsehood." These are all the opposites of keeping Torah. So this is really important. He says, "I, Yahushua, have sent my messenger to witness to you these matters in the assemblies. I am the root and offspring of David, the bright and morning star." When people talk about this movement, many people call this a movement. And they'll say that this is a Hebrew roots movement. But what I don't think that they understand is that the Mashiach, the Messiah of Israel, is the root. It clearly says he is the root and offspring of David. So this is Hebrew because he is Hebrew, right? This is Hebrew roots only because he is Hebrew, because he is Ibri, because he is Yahudi. He was from the tribe of Yehudah, from the tribe of Judah. So the Torah is very important. The Torah is written in the language of creation. YaHuWaH Elohim created the worlds with the language that he used to speak to Moshe, to the prophets. All these things were recorded in the language of creation. YaHuWaH calls it Lashon Esh. He says, "Is not my tongue like fire? Is not my words like fire?" That word is Lashon Esh. It refers to his speech. His language is the language of fire. We call it today Ibri or Hebrew. But originally it was called this. And he used this to create the worlds. This is the Mashiach. When Mashiach is called, in your version, he might be called Alpha and Omega. That's because it comes from Greek. But he's not a Greek. He's a Hebrew. He's Ibri. It comes from Aleph and Taw, the first and last of the Hebrew alphabet. These were the letters that were used to create the worlds. That's the reason it says that all things were created through him, because he's the Word. Mashiach is the Word. And we have to get back to the root. The root is the Word of YaHuWaH. It is the Mashiach of Yisrael, the Mashiach who came from Yehudah, who will sit on the throne of David. This is the great revelation. And in YaHuWaH's kingdom, YaHuWaH is the supreme ruler, and his authority is above all. His authority is even above Mashiach. Many people do not realize this, but the Mashiach, Messiah Yahushua, said, "The Father is greater than I." YaHuWaH is the greatest. We are to pray to him, proclaim all these things that he has told us, the righteous decrees and all these righteous judgments, and to proclaim the glad tidings of Yahushua, the Word that became flesh, who showed us how we should live, who confirmed the covenant and reinstituted the Brit Hadashah, the renewal of the covenant. And now the Torah will be written in the hearts of all those who are a part of this renewed covenant. So we need to understand what Torah is. And we should study the Torah together. We should study the Torah within our communities, within our gatherings. We should be studying Torah each and every Sabbath and throughout the weeks. We should be doing what David did when he said, "I meditate upon your Torah day and night." Every day. That doesn't just mean on the Sabbath. Day and night. So to do this, we have resources available for you at messengerofthename.com. We have studies, weekly studies that are done, the Torah portion highlights, which are highlights of the important parts of each and every Torah portion. The Torah portions are a Torah cycle that we go through each and every year, where we complete reading the 5 books of Moses. And I don't recommend just reading the 5 books of Moshe, by the way. You have to read the entirety of Scripture to get the great context. But we do have this available. And I would like for you to look at it, to study it, to follow along. Let us study together. If you have little ones, if you have children, we have a resource for them too. We have the Youth Center. We have weekly Torah portions for them that are written on a very simplistic summary style. But yet, I say simplistic, but yet it's very rich, and there's so much information there that if you teach your children the Torah of YaHuWaH, they will not depart from it. The scriptures clearly say, "Train a child in the way he should go, and he will not depart from it." So train them up now while you still have the opportunity. And they will be like that righteous man that David described in Psalm chapter 1, who is planted by the rivers of living water, whose leaves do not fail, and who bears the fruit in its proper season. The reason that we study Torah, and the scriptures say that the Torah will make us wise, that it will make us prosperous, that it will give us a barakah in our life, because it is the way of life. It's the way of the Messiah. The Messiah walked this way. So we also guard the way. We also guard the understandings. But we have to rightly divide the word of truth, rightly understand the scriptures. So I advise you to study the scriptures, but study the Torah and make it a part of your life to understand these matters, so you can understand the heart of the Creator. YaHuWaH did not give us an image to bow down to, but he gave us words. He gave us words so that we know what pleases him and how he truly is and who he truly is. And so we need to study this out and grow with him and know him, because he will set up his kingdom soon. The King, Melech HaShamayim, the King of the heavens, YaHuWaH, who is Melech HaOlam, the King of eternity, the King of the age, He has one Torah, one law, one instruction, one teaching, and that is the same no matter who you are.
In closing, the Torah is the tree of life, Etz Chaim, and the Messiah, Mashiach Yahushua, is the Torah. So the Messiah also is the tree of life. YaHuWaH be with you. Shalom.